Greetings and welcome to the final episode of a tutorial series aimed to explain some of the tools you'll be using while playing Crazy Machines 3. In this episode, we'll be taking all of the knowledge covered in my previous tutorial episodes and bringing it together to craft a fully functioning machine, which we will finally upload to the Steam Workshop, along with the parts we've created especially for it. Returning to the machine we've been building throughout this tutorial series, you might feel that it is all but complete. In fact, in terms of the puzzle, it is. However, while we've built a puzzle for the player to solve, and even added some special effects, the most important element is still missing. A goal. The goal of a machine can take many shapes, from simply delivering an object from A to B, causing some effect to trigger, or destroying an object. It can even be the reverse of these, such as preventing an object from reaching somewhere or preventing its destruction. Now, no doubt you can think of several ways we can accomplish this. But the idea I've settled on is to add a crashed flying saucer. The goal of the machine could be to help the derpy clumsy corns to restore power to their creation by having the truck throw a lever, which it can do if it crosses the bridge. I envision us needing two new parts, one being the launch platform and the lever, and the second being the flying saucer itself. But before we begin, for the sake of the tutorial, the parts we create will be a little bit more involved than in the previous episodes, so I'll time-lapse the building while I explain what I'm working on. Feel free to pause the video if you need a closer look at something. Now, for the launch platform, all we need is a surface with some sort of button or lever for the truck to activate. So starting with a few boards, I scale them up to ensure that the final object will be wide enough that the truck will be able to pass between its legs. And as I want a cobbled together look for this, I'll use logs for the legs themselves. Next, we'll need a surface at the back so that we can attach the lever, as well as something to stop the truck from simply driving off into the sunset once it's done. These boards are especially useful for that, as they have so many equally spaced points to attach things to. Now, onto the lever itself, which is a simple case of attaching a sphere to the end of a rod for the classic comic book style of lever. But rather than have the lever be the trigger, I choose to add a button to the wall beside it. The truck can then swing the lever into the button. Additionally, for a bit of visual flair, I've added 3 light bulbs to act as a sort of countdown. And then it's time to add a bit of colour to our design. Again, I'm looking for a cobbled together aesthetic for this, to go along with the derpy nature of the clumsy corns. Finally, it's on to the special effects and signal chips. It's worth noting that the light bulbs themselves don't produce any light, so we'll need a spherical light effect to achieve this. Now, don't worry if you find this part difficult to follow. What I've done is essentially set up a series of countdown timers tied to the lights, so that they'll turn on and off in sequence, from red all the way to green. I specifically wanted the lights to turn off a few moments after the next light turned on, so I had to create a second countdown to turn the lights back off again. Finally, as each stage completes, it will send a signal to the machine that we can use in our UFO. Now, time to test our creation. As you can see, the truck can happily navigate over the bridge and flick the lever at the far end of the table, which causes the lights to turn on in sequence. However, the astute among you may have noticed that based on this design, it would be possible for the player to roll a ball down under the table instead of the truck, bypassing it altogether. So let's make a few small adjustments to our launch table to make sure only the truck can pass through. Once again, there are numerous ways that we could accomplish this task, but I've chosen something that will hopefully be visually satisfying. A wall of plastic beads. Made out of rods and eggs, of all things, I make each link in the chain a ball joint so it has complete freedom of motion, and start each chain at an angle so it'll begin swinging right away. They'll be too heavy for the ball to push past, but the truck, which has a constant steady force pushing it forward, should be able to pass through. Let's test it out now. As you can see, the ball can't push through, even with a healthy run-up. The truck, on the other hand, although it gets slowed initially, does manage with a little perseverance to push through. Perfect. Okay, now onto the flying saucer itself. Once again, this is a much more involved part, so I'll speed up the video to save time. First, we'll start with the main body of the flying saucer. A simple combination of two basic shapes will do, and as I know I want it to be reflective later, we'll change the material to a metal and ceramic right now. Next, for the disc sections, we'll need a concave surface, so the parabolic mirror element will suit our needs nicely. Once I have it scaled and positioned as I want, I add 4 lighting effects and colour them. There's no need for a light bulb object here. Now for some extra detail on the top. As the discs will eventually rotate, we want to add some texture to the surface so it's clear that the discs are spinning. And going along with the general theme of the clumsy corn's work, we'll give the mirror a scuffed appearance. Of course, we'll need the classic glass dome at the top as well for the pilot to see out of. Now we need to work on the lower disc. First, I have to make a slight adjustment to scale so that the discs are a little closer together. Then I add a train wheel to the bottom to create the effect of a thruster or an exhaust. But then it's simply a case of placing 4 new lights and colouring them, as well as the disc itself. With that done, it's just time to add a couple of extra features and details to the disc and the thruster itself, and we're done with the model and can move on to setting up the effects. First, we'll start with torque, and wire them up to rotate each disc in opposite directions. We'll only want the rotation to happen once the final signal is received from the table, though. Next, we add a little extra detail in the form of smoke billowing out of the craft and tie it up to a reverse toggle. It will continue to produce smoke until the first signal is received. Additionally, we wire up an electric spark sound effect to play to indicate that something has been fixed inside the saucer. The next signal simply toggles on the lights inside the saucer section, which should be visible thanks to the reflective surface of the main body. Finally, we add some additional sound effects. A hover sound effect set to play repeatedly once the disc starts to spin, and a deep, synthesized horn that will play as the lights come back on. And with that, we're finished. Let's go check this out in action. As you can see, I've added a few new details to the machine to make it a little bit more lively and interesting to look at, as well as 2 new signal chips, arguably the most important chips in the machine. These are the fail and success chips. I've wired the failure chip up to the seesaw bridge. Should this explode, then it will signal the failure of the mission, as the truck will no longer be able to cross the rocky obstacle. And the success chip has been wired to the final signal being sent from the table. Let's give it a quick test. First, let's check the failure condition. As you can see, the moment the bridge explodes, the play button turns into a big red cross to let us know that the mission is a failure. Next, let's check the full machine in action and test the success condition. Perfect! The flying saucer is repaired and the clumsy corns celebrate with a round of applause. All that remains is to fill out the details of the machine and the various parts, then publish them to the Steam Workshop. Of course, this is an entirely optional step, but I'll include it for completeness sake. As you can see, I've already filled out all of the relevant details for the parts and named them appropriately, so let's go ahead and publish them. First, the seesaw bridge. Next, the lever table. Now the UFO. And last, but certainly not least, we'll publish the machine itself. And with that, we've come to the end of this episode and the tutorial series itself. I hope these videos have been helpful and perhaps even offered a little inspiration into the sorts of things you can build in Crazy Machines 3. If you should have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments of these videos or on the Crazy Machines 3 community forums on Steam. But that's all from me for now, so as always, take care and have fun.